Looking ahead, toward 2026, which today, for Formula One, takes the concrete shape of a calendar with dates and venues for the countries that will host the premier class next year. A provisional calendar, as the organization is keen to emphasize, but a framework of 24 race weekends that propels Formula One into the next season, even though the current one hasn't yet reached its halfway point. In fact, Sunday's Canadian Grand Prix will mark the 10th round of the 2025 season, an important milestone. Before the season began, all teams shared the same outlook. It will be important to understand the hierarchy before the summer break, team principals said in unison, in order to decide when to shift focus to 2026. That year will bring with it the technical revolution of the next generation of cars, which, at least on paper, will reshuffle the competitive order of all the teams on the grid. Lewis Hamilton admitted during the last race weekend that he would soon tell the team to focus on next year, clearly disappointed by the performance of the SF25 so far and already looking ahead to Ferrari's future. However, that future is far from clearly defined for Maranello. Reports from the paddock indicate widely varying expectations about the 2026 power units across teams, with Mercedes currently rumored to be well ahead in development. If Ferrari hopes to enter a new era as a dominant force, it will first need to rely on a core group of key figures capable of producing a winning car. The team has not won a Constructors' Championship since 2008, and team principal Fred Vasseur, now approaching 3 years in the role, was brought in to lead a deep restructuring. That process has included some significant departures, notably sporting director Laurent Mekies in 2023 and technical director Enrico Cardile. The arrival of new technical director Loic Serra, who joined Ferrari's technical group less than a year ago, has not yet yielded immediate improvements. On the contrary, the car has underperformed compared to last season's results, contrary to the expectations of many fans. Adding salt to the wound is a recent disappointment: Ferrari's failure to secure the services of aerodynamic mastermind Adrian Newey, who in 2024 seemed very close to joining Maranello before ultimately choosing Aston Martin. There, the British designer has thrown himself into the ambitious 2026 project. Another problem in this 2025 Formula One campaign for Ferrari, undoubtedly linked to the team's lack of competitiveness relative to preseason expectations, has been the inconsistency in communication and performance from key figures. The drivers swing between confidence and near resignation, sending mixed messages, while the team principal presents smiles and optimism despite a clear technical gap to rivals. There's a tendency to delay the acceptance of difficulties. But stalling only helps if the situation improves, and so far, that hasn't happened. The opening months of 2025 have been challenging for Fred Vasseur, with results generally falling well short of expectations and punctuated by tense moments, such as the visible frustration of newcomer Lewis Hamilton or the embarrassment of the double disqualification in China. The next 3 Grands Prix, from Montreal to the Red Bull Ring and then Silverstone, will therefore be decisive, not so much for this year's championship, which is now firmly in McLaren's hands, but rather for next season and Vasseur's future in red. His current contract with Maranello expires at the end of the year. To ensure project continuity, it would be important for Fred Vasseur himself to carry forward the car that will debut in 2026, a project he is fundamentally the architect of. However, if results by year's end remain at current levels, the team principal may face an exit from the team. Closing the performance gap to McLaren, or at least showing signs of narrowing it, is now essential for entering the decisive stages of the season with greater confidence. Not so much to prove Ferrari can fight for the top step of the podium today, but to guarantee that, with the current team, it will be possible to do so tomorrow. Because 2026 and its inevitable consequences have never felt so close for the Maranello squad. Ferrari is active on the market, looking not only for engineers but also for staff who can strengthen the team. However, the emerging trend is that the engineers contacted are unwilling to come to Maranello, a troubling sign that makes it incredibly difficult to reinforce a structure that is already showing too many cracks. The concern is less about the revision of the SF25, as the upgrades have been decided and will arrive before the summer break, including a new floor and the much-discussed rear suspension, and more about the birth of the 2026 Formula One single-seater, the project meant to bring the Prancing Horse into the new regulatory era of agile cars. Every component will be entirely new: chassis, power unit, tires, aerodynamics. Very little will carry over from today's models. as F1 undergoes a transformation with a new technological challenge, moving to power units that are 50% electric and 50% internal combustion. It is a pioneering shift that will put some manufacturers under pressure. Paddock rumors once again place Mercedes ahead of the competition, and if that proves true, Ferrari would once again be chasing the silver arrows, just like in 2014 at the start of the hybrid era. John Elkann and Benedetto Vigna had placed their faith in Fred Vasseur's project to win the championship in the final year of ground effect cars before the new regulatory cycle begins. But the 2025 Formula One season is turning into a disaster. The SF25 was poorly born and, above all, cannot match the pace of rivals' development. This car, completely redesigned compared to the SF24, was supposed to offer aerodynamicists various development paths that ultimately did not materialize. The goals have failed miserably. McLaren has a clear advantage, reportedly nearly 0.4 per lap, a massive gap that cannot be closed before the end of the year. So the real question becomes, is this working group adequate to take on the 2026 challenges? Loic Serra is an excellent engineer who came from Mercedes, where his absence is currently felt, to take on the role of technical director, a position he had never held before, entrusted to him by Fred Vasseur. But there's a big difference between overseeing a project and managing an entire technical department. The Frenchman lacks the charisma needed to drive the team forward. After Imola, upper management demanded a quicker rollout of updates, but no such push has been seen. Meanwhile, there was hope that changes in wing flexibility regulations would benefit Maranello. With stiffer profiles, some believed they could close the gap to the Papaya cars, but Barcelona crushed that illusion. This appears to be a Ferrari that has lost its claws. Is the problem purely technical, or do the causes run deeper? It's surprising that Fred Vasseur's contract, which ends in late 2025, completing a 3-year cycle, has not yet been discussed for renewal, especially for such a strategic role moving forward. Perhaps the negotiations are being conducted in total silence, but many observers sense that a cold front has begun between Fred Vasseur and Ferrari's ownership, similar to what preceded Mattia Binotto's departure. The team principal continues to chase potential in the car that hasn't materialized, while Lewis Hamilton, for instance, is already advising to write off 2025 and devote all energy to next year. Is the team divided? From the outside, it is hard to say, but if John Elkann is considering a leadership change, the feeling is that it may already be too late. Rumors of interest in Christian Horner, a longtime favorite of the president, have been denied by British manager himself, who is defending his fortress in Milton Keynes. So, if change is coming, who could realistically take charge of the racing department in the midst of a technical revolution? The recurring name is Antonello Coletta. The Italian manager is at Le Mans, leading Ferrari's charge in the 24 hours. He was already offered the F1 team principal role before Fred Vasseur, but turned it down to pursue his clear WEC goals. He has won 2 editions of Le Mans and currently leads the World Endurance Championship. Once he secures the title, it's possible he'll be asked to return to Formula One. Antonello Coletta knows the company dynamics and the people. He would know where to intervene from within to give the Italian side a new direction. Although the head of endurance programs wants to stay where he is, it is worth recalling that early in the Sergio Marchionne era, he was brought into Formula One as a consultant and successfully reorganized the sporting department, discovering untapped internal talent before Maurizio Arrivabene was appointed. Beyond contract matters, both Ferrari drivers are restless. Charles Leclerc is admired by Toto Wolff, and the delay in Mercedes renewing George Russell's deal, now that the dream of signing Max Verstappen has faded, inevitably puts the Monegasque in focus. He is eager to finally drive a competitive F1 car. If Charles Leclerc wanted to move, he would have to invoke exit clauses, which are standard in contracts nowadays. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton's disappointment could lead to an early retirement sooner than planned. Ferrari could thus find itself without any drivers, despite currently fielding one of the best duos on the grid. It will be interesting to see whether Maranello is on the verge of a bottom-up revolution, identifying engineers who can spark a turnaround under Fred Vasseur's leadership, or whether, on the contrary, the change will come from the top, entrusting the direction to someone new at the helm of the racing division. We have reached a critical crossroads and there is little time to act either way.